up, everyone? Got the Evolving the Conversation podcast today, and we got our first guest, who's my friend Frankie Fihn. Frankie and I met, oh, I don't know, how many years ago is that? 2014,
Oh,
2015?
long time ago, my friend.
Oh, that is a long time.
Feels like it. But yeah, it was right around there. And we met in a circle, the Blue Morpho plant medicine circle. And that's actually how we all know each other. And so we're here today and we're just going to have a conversation, probably around the topics of marketing, business, eh, whatever comes up. Definitely some plant medicines. And and yeah. So Frankie, I don't know if you want to maybe give just like a little intro about who you are and what you're
Dude,
about.
that was cool right there. I mean, I guess a lot of people know me from the book I wrote called Beyond the Agency Box, which is all about like kind of living the whole laptop lifestyle and working around the world. But like you have a heavy interest in plant medicine and shamanism and all that those cool like the more journeys into the unknown where you feel like you don't know shit shit about stuff.
You're always feeling like a beginner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you uncover one mystery and 100 more show up.
hmm And even when you're on like layer 1000 of the onion, you still realize like it goes on forever, and you're just as confused about layer 1001 as you were about step one of that journey.
It never
Yeah.
ever ends.
But
Frankie,
appreciate
how
you
did
guys
you
having me.
what were you saying?
Just appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so happy to meet you finally.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here with us.
I know a little bit about you from your book and a little bit about you from working with Blue Morpho. I'm curious how you started working with Blue Morpho.
It's actually kind of a wild thing. So I was like, um, I was in a period of life where I had like quit the 9 to 5 world, and I was all like confused, just trying to figure out how to make money on the internet. And then at some point, I kind of cracked it. I wouldn't say like I had all of life figured out, but I figured out how to make money in a lot of it. And I was actually like really miserable on the inside. And the longer and longer I sat with it, I realized it was because like what I was doing to earn it wasn't in alignment with who I was. So for the
Mhm.
most part, I was like helping plastic surgeons to sell more plastic surgery. I kind of joke, but it's kind of true that I help sell more boob jobs than like any man alive. And but it didn't really feel good to me. Like if most women in real life came to me and said like, should I get plastic surgery? Other than like if you were like destroyed in an accident, most times I would say like you look beautiful as you are, like just embrace who you are and not try and like change that. And so I never really felt good about it. I didn't really like the clients. So I was like everything about it on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment I hated doing. I hated the kind of marketing work I was doing for them. And at the time I had discovered this whole ayahuasca thing, and this was long before ayahuasca was like a mainstream thing. Like every time I would say the word, people would go, what's that? It wasn't like now where they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I know a guy in California that does that. Like it was totally this unheard of thing. And I went through this period where I thought the magic was the ayahuasca. So I read online all these stories about it, and I eventually made my own, which I don't recommend to anybody else in
Damn.
the world. And I tried some, and I did it actually 6 times on my own. And eventually like the third experience was the one that kind of led me into the whole like Blue Morpho thing, which was um I tried it. I had this whole like vision of basically like a Kleenex box that said on the words of dreams and inspiration. They like floated into me like in my visionary experience off the Kleenex box, and I became like super inspired, just tripping balls staring into this Kleenex box. And it had a blue butterfly in the top corner, which I didn't really think much of. But when I came down the next day and was like completely sober, I started having like blue butterfly synchronicities like 10, 15, 20 times a day. It was just like blue butterflies, like, and they in every way possible. Like they just found me in every direction. Like people would have them on t-shirts and movies and books and all these things. And then I started to like really think about like, okay, now you're making money. Like what would actually make you happy? And I realized like there was a part of me that like if I felt like I was selling something that I really believed in and helping people I really believed in, I would feel better about the whole way in which I was earning a living. And so I just randomly one day, it was my last ayahuasca experience on my own, and I had a vision of like a giant blue butterfly made of like millions of tiny blue butterflies. And when I started to sober up, I did the only thing my rational mind could figure out was like, I Googled it. I'm like, blue butterfly ayahuasca. Like, does this mean anything to anyone else? And that was it. There was only one thing. There was Blue Morpho retreats. And so I sat with it for like a week, and then I reached out to them and I was like, wonder if they're just looking for help doing this kind of thing. And unbeknownst to me, Hamilton was doing a ceremony and they wanted to bring their music projects to the world. And he was kind of like, spirits bring me a marketing person, was what he actually told him. And I literally showed up the next day and said, like, I don't know, do you guys need some like marketing help? And so like it all kind of lined up. And so he was like, you need to come down to the jungle. And I went down there in December of, I actually remember it because it was December of 2012 and everybody said the world was going to end at that point. And there's like that whole hysteria. And for me, in many ways, like whatever I thought the world was died to me in that period of time. It didn't like die in like an asteroid coming and smashing into us, but whatever I thought a linear reality was. And then like, for me, it went literally from like not seeing spirits to like, they're an everyday part of life forever, till the end of time. So that's kind of how I got involved in it, but it was unplanned. It was like, really, I like to, like, for me, there was like this synchronicity breadcrumb trail that just kept leading me there.
Yeah, that is totally full of synchronicities, that story.
And it was really wild too, because like, they don't tell you that like Hamilton didn't tell me when I first went down there that like, hey, we did a ceremony and we asked the spirits, bring me a marketing person. And I'm like, I showed up right then. I actually still remember there was a wild experience. It was almost 2 years later and I was still like seeing the signs and synchronicities. And I was like, what does it even mean? Like, I see this every day, but like, what does it mean? And I remember, in it, Hamilton said that it was just a little private ceremony at his house, and he said, like, this is Frankie, this Ikaros for you. And he started singing like a blue butterfly Ikaro, and then all of a sudden I could see this like giant blue butterfly kind of waving in and out. And what happened for me is like it all kind of like, as you guys know, like the oneness experience started happening, and I started feeling like really calm and beautiful, but there was a part of my mind that was still like a little bit physical in my body, and it started freaking out because it was like, at some point you're going to be normal and you're going to be sober and you're going to forget all this and you're going to be terrified about life again. And I was like, hey, I want to make sure I never forget this. And in my vision, I started putting this blue butterfly in like literally every atom of reality. I'm like, I want this medicine to be accessible to me in every way, in every time, in every place. And the only way I could think of to do that in the vision is I literally just started putting it in everything. And then I started to see in nonlinear time that I had been sending myself synchronicities from that ceremony, like all across space and time. And it was like, you realize like I was the one guiding me, but it was like, it's totally wild when those dots connect. You're like, mine's just like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think cool. You just did that to my mind right now.
But it certainly wasn't planned. It wasn't like one day I woke up and said, I want to do this. Ayahuasca stuff and see a gazillion.
I suppose it was harder then when it wasn't as popular as it is now, where you could wake up one day and be like, I think I want to try ayahuasca.
Yeah, and in some ways, like, I like to say like I found the best of the best, but like there's honestly like just a lot of dumb shit luck that I didn't do anything that like because there's a whole like dark side to ayahuasca that people don't know about and things that can go wrong. And even just like, never mind all of that, like just like let's say I bought it online and it had been like not very good stuff or it was contaminated. It's like those are all possibilities that I somehow managed to avoid in my naivety.
Yeah, right, with all of the drinking by yourself.
Yeah. But I was just in a phase where I read all these stories and they made, all the stories made the ayahuasca the hero, not the person, administering it and their, know-how and their ability to hold space. So I kind of just assumed like it didn't really matter when and where you tried it and who it was with. Even when I went down to the jungle for the first time and had like undeniable, like real, like kind of mystical experiences for the first time in my life, part of me just assumed, well, they got stronger ayahuasca. Like I assumed it was all the substance and the substance explained everything.
Yeah. I wonder though if people still probably have that kind of mindset that it's the ayahuasca and not the ayahuasca practitioner who you're working with.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I think most people just see it as like the ayahuasquero is just like basically like a bartender.
Yeah, I kind of think so too, because there's just so many people out there that are dishing out ayahuasca when I personally wouldn't be drinking with any of them.
Yeah, and not just that, Melissa. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but like I have some friends in Southern California and they tried it. And I remember they told me there was this lady and she played like a music track of like burping frogs. I don't know, I guess that's a thing. And I asked the guy how it was, and he was like, "Yeah, it was kind of like interesting. It was kind of cool." And I was like, "I don't think we did the same stuff because I know that like if you do it like someone like Hamilton, a side effect of it is you can never shut up about it again for the rest of your life, like because it's like literally the most mind blowing thing that's ever happened to you in your entire existence, and you have no frame of reference and nothing that even compares. I've been on like some of the tallest roller coasters in the world and done some crazy things, and those are all cool. But like, I don't know, if you ask me like what was the most interesting, day of your life, it's like, oh, definitely when you try a full cup of ayahuasca and in the jungle, like nothing compares to that. And so like to me, I was like, you didn't feel like you knew everything and all time was connected. It was a turtle and you were creating and it was all infinite. No, they're just like, no, some perfect frog is kind of cool. And I think that's an indication of just like like a sense of possibility. Like I kind of look at it now, and I mean, who knows, it's to me it's like it's more like a radio station where when you take it, like you have the capacity to access things, but if you don't dial it into the right station, you won't automatically get to those kind of deeper places.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense too. I suppose also like Hamilton being able to hold all those different radio frequencies for you in the ceremony does, I think, add to the potential and the possibility of where we could go and what we could explore and what we could tune into.
I'd be curious to know, actually, this is a little bit random, but can I ask you guys what inspired you guys to start this podcast?
Yeah. You should talk to Nick about that.
Share it, my man.
Well, I would say since I started listening to podcasts, I always had the thought that I wanted to have a podcast one day. And then during the summer, Melissa and I had met again um, at a retreat we were on. And I sort of just had a vision that I wanted to do a podcast. And then afterwards, I got the idea to ask Melissa because we had some interesting conversations and I thought it would be a good fit. And so here we
Nice.
are having this conversation. And yeah, it's just that really is sort of what inspired me to bring about this idea to Melissa and see if she would like to be a co-host with me and co-host this thing together and have it be about just the things that we're into that we share in common and have it be something that could evolve a friendship and um, create more friendships out of it and just have some really cool conversations.
That's so cool. Yeah, I found
Yeah.
it's an awesome tool to open doors too, because if you reach out to somebody, as most people do, and you say like, "Hey, like, I like you and I want to hang out with you," they don't always take it so well from a stranger. But if you say like, "Hey, you seem really cool, but I would love to make a show with you," like they're much more open to do it. So it's an amazing way that you guys can open doors and stuff too.
Yeah, we weren't strangers too. It was actually really quite interesting. Um, during the pandemic, when the Trinity retreats were going on, I sort of like mentioned something about the town that I live in, and then her husband came on the horn on Telegram and was like, "Oh, does someone here live in Bethlehem?" I was like, "Yeah, it's me. I live in this shithole." And then and then yeah, I was just like, yeah, got to know Lou, and then we started talking. I was like, hey, you guys don't live too far away. Would you guys like to hang out? You'd be like the first Blue Morpho community members that I would meet face to face. And so we hung out and we went on a hike together. Lou and Melissa and the
And my
kids.
two kids, don't forget about them. They were ready to stop walking after like 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds like
That was funny. Yeah. And yeah, then once we met again and I just sort of had the idea for it, I thought it would be just fun to do. So I figured why not? It was sort of like a training too, and just getting past the fear of putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually the hardest thing too. It's always like you'll be judged by somebody who doesn't know you and they'll say all these awful things. And when it actually does happen, usually it's actually kind of funny. So like in my experience, like I don't know, maybe I have a different relationship than most, but like if you do put yourself out there, like eventually you do get haters, and usually I find it kind of funny. Like sometimes they're actually kind of clever.
How so? How are they clever?
I don't know, like just the stupid comments they get. Like I did a video the other day, and it was pretty edgy. But I mean, I think you saw it,
I
Nick.
saw that one.
So it's for those of you guys who don't know, in the marketing space, there's a thing where people will message you and say like, hey, I can get you 30 booked appointments, meaning like I can get strangers booked on your calendar for like sales calls, so you can potentially make some money. And the problem is there's like 10,000 people doing it, and they all have the same exact message. So like depending on how frequently you are in that space, you can sometimes like 10-20 times a day get the same message from like dozens and dozens of different people, just like, bro, I can feel your calendar. And so I did and there's usually like two types of people doing it. There's like young single guys who are like gym rats, for lack of a nicer term to call that. And then there's like Indian guys who pretend to be like a white girl on the internet. They're like pretend to be a pretty white girl. So I did a video of that, and a couple of the Indian people thought it was hilarious, but naturally, like there's some people who didn't find it so funny, and they're like, "Bro, like we do not even fucking wear a turban." And I was just like, "Yeah, I know that." Like, I don't really think you like walk around wearing a turban. I'm just kind of making fun of the people
Wait, they said we don't wear a turban.
who. But I don't take it so seriously anymore.
It
But yeah,
really
good. I
just
mean,
takes.
I was just gonna say that's huge for you guys getting over that fear and just putting yourselves out there and trying it and doing something that's fun and meaningful for you.
I don't know about for either of you two, but I know for me, in the beginning of like each podcast, I still get a little bit of that fear come up. And it's just
Yeah.
something to work past
I
for
I
think
mean,
me.
I
for
think,
recording, I don't get fearful. I definitely get sweaty armpits though, but
oh, you know what I do for real, Melissa? This is the thing. I didn't do that this time, but in general, like I like to shower and smell nice for a podcast. For a podcast, right? Like
I
nobody
do the
can
same
smell
thing.
you, nobody can. But I swear, I feel like it affects how you feel about yourself, which changes.
yeah, I can see that. We were kind of just talking about that, like, I guess, well, it was trust, which I think like equals confidence in yourself. But yeah, having that confidence in yourself that you know what you're going to be saying and the words are going to be coming out in a way that makes sense when they actually leave your head and in a way that leaves some kind of positive impression. Although even if it leaves a negative, like we're talking about, then right, it's not like it's who you actually are or what you actually are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you're just
usually the
doing
people,
it.
by the way, who like hate you the most, um, it's almost always like more of an expression of them and what they're going through, and
Yeah.
has very, very little to do with you and anything you put out there, right? Like I see this because I'm in a lot of, a lot of what I do is helping people grow businesses, but there's a certain percentage of people, like if I show an ad, it's like, I don't know, one out of every 3-4 comments is just some guy who's like, "This is a fucking scam, a fucking scammer," and fucking like, and like I'm like, I can't imagine like, that I was the first ad they said that on. Like, and I'm just like, can you imagine the type of person who like sees every Facebook ad and just writes, "There's a fucking scam, and you guys are all trying to rip me off," and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Like, and I'm
like
just,
how uncomfortable must that person be feeling, right? To comment.
and it's so true, right? Because somebody said something like, hurt people, right? So meaning like, you're probably not in a good place if you're trying to like spread negativity on somebody else's stuff.
Yeah, especially on something as benign as like a marketing ad for you trying to help people make money.
It may seem benign, but for some reason, like people get really triggered over that.
Yeah, I guess, right. Maybe it's not fair to call someone's pain benign.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it probably reflects back at them their own like inadequacies in trying to do that, right? Like
Yeah, I could relate to that. I mean,
in some ways, if you have,
yeah, for sure. Do you think it's as easy to make money now on the internet as when you had first started?
I don't, there's some ways in which it's exponentially easier, and there's some ways in which it's exponentially harder, and there, it's like kind of a mosaic that's all mixed together. Like one way that it's easier, like I remember when I was first starting, I remember I was trying to create like a simple little web page. It was a friend of mine. He had written a real estate course, and I was just trying to make a little page that said like, we got a real estate course, and here's a button if you'd like to buy it. And it took me more than a month to figure out how to do that, because it was like I had to research, and then I remember I found somebody else. Actually, it was a funny story too, because I took somebody else's page. I finally found like a website I liked, and I said, okay, I'm going to use this guy's template, and I'm going to build it out of this. And I remember I opened it up, and it was an HTML editor. It was just like all this code. And I was like, I don't know what any of this is. This is like, might as well be like, hieroglyphs. And I was like, okay, I could see the parts that were text. And I was like, okay, if I only change the text, I won't break anything else, right? Where it says like, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'll change my name to his name. And he had some tracking code on this website, the guy who originally, had this other thing. And so I copied all his tracking code too. And so one day he was like checking his numbers on his website, and all my stuff was firing on his website. And I got a really angry message from him for some shit I didn't even know I did. And I remember thinking like it was really, really hard to figure out just how to make like a simple little one-page thing. And today that's exponentially easier. Like I use dozens of different tools, but like I can create that page in under 2 minutes. Like realistically, like I can grab a template, blah, 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 swipe it up. And so like that part of it has gotten easier, but the part of it that's gotten harder is there's more people doing it. There's more noise. There's more competition. And then like, like, I joke with this because I work with a lot of lawyers, but like the only people who are more hated than them are marketers, right? So like you inherit this reputation that you didn't like personally earn, where just everybody hates you because you're an asshole selling shit on the internet as far as they're concerned. And so there's that part of it that's more challenging. Like I see this where a lot of people try and like to drum up business will message strangers, and those strangers now have like 100 messages a day in their inbox. And when I first started, you might have been one of 2 people messaging him at all, ever. And so like it would have been a lot easier to get their attention. So there's parts of it that are both easier and harder.
How would you like to see marketing evolve for the better, or what aspects of marketing do you think could evolve in a better way? Both online and offline.
I think what most people do in step 1 determines like often not just like how well something will do, but the overall like kind of intention of it. And I see like most people in the marketing space, I don't think it's bad because like that's where most people are, but they ask a lot of self-serving questions. Like, I mean, Nick, you're part of my group. Like 99% of the questions I get are very self-serving. Like questions like, how can I get somebody to buy my thing? What do I need to say? What's the right message? What video should I use to get them to buy my thing? I don't think it's like inherently bad, but the more it becomes like focused on the other person and actually being a tool to help them rather than manipulate them into doing it. Don't get me wrong. There is an element that is just hard for people to accept, that is like psychological manipulation. But if you do it in an ethical and beneficial way, like for example, if there's somebody who's been trying to lose weight for 10 years and you kind of step on their pain a little bit to get them to finally do something about it, you're actually like benefiting them in a way. But I think what most people need to do more is really think about the person they're trying to connect with and understand who they are better. And that step alone, not only I think is more beneficial for the entire industry, but it actually makes your business easier. Because I see this all the time where people start what I call Me Too businesses, where they're things that don't really need to exist. So like I give the example, like in my hometown, it's a car factory town. It's right next to Detroit. It's the Canadian version of Detroit, and it's just there's way too many auto body shops, like just way too many of them. And I think the reason most of them start is because some guy thinks like, I don't want to work for somebody else. I'm going to start my own auto body shop. Screw this. I don't want to have a boss. But the problem is it's a Me Too business, and the market doesn't really need another auto body shop. There's one guy in my town, and it's kind of a funny story, but I remember I was at my brother's house. He was eating Chinese food. He ordered some Chinese food, and like 5 minutes later, the Chinese food driver knocked on the door, and he pointed, and my brother was pissed because he had backed up into my brother's car, which was parked. And my brother's parked car backed up into my girlfriend's car, and like the tailpipe went through her Volkswagen Beetle. And I remember we had to go to an auto body shop, and the insurance company recommended like 3 you have to go to get quotes. And all 3 of them said, we won't give you a quote because we don't work on Volkswagens. And I remember we went to this guy who was and he was a Volkswagen specialist. He only worked on Volkswagens and nothing else. And he told us, I'm backed up for 2 or 3 weeks. Tell the rental company that, that like you got to get a rental car for like at least a month because it's going to take that long. And I'm just backed up, and I'll get to it when I get to it. But that guy's business is fundamentally easier to like be successful because it's something the market actually needed. Like people really said, hey, I need somebody who can help me with Volkswagens, where most of the people are just starting. And sometimes it's a 10% shift. Like there's not a huge difference between I'm an auto body shop and I'm a Volkswagen auto body shop. But if you actually like focus on doing it out of service, like not only is it more beneficial to everybody, but it makes like less assholey marketers, and you actually like bring something into the space and that is needed, and therefore like fundamentally business is easier because you're doing something that like people want. And so you're not always like trying to arm twist them into doing stuff they don't want to do. The opposite is you're saying, hey, it seems like everybody needs a Volkswagen fixer upper dude, so I'm going to be that guy and fulfill that in the space. And I think this is like, it's hard for people because like, most of the reasons we go to work online are very like self-serving, and like, I'm not saying those can't exist. Everybody has those self-serving needs, but there also needs to be some like market-serving reasons in addition to the self-serving reasons. And that alone, I think, like would fundamentally change everything for everybody. And the ironic thing is when you do that as like a business owner, you benefit most because your shit gets easier to sell more often, and all the things you're trying to do are easier, but it starts with focusing on other people and what they actually need.
I like that too. And I also like you saying that to manipulate someone, but in a more positive way, because a lot of times you see in modern marketing sort of like the catch line of, hey, you're not good enough without this product. Buy this product, you'll be good enough.
Yeah, exactly. You should feel like shit, but if you just buy a 6-pack of one of these,
You
you'll
won't
be whole again, right?
Well, I
Yeah.
think that's a whole way that marketing is taught, is by focusing on people's pain,
Yeah.
right? What's wrong with them.
And there's no shortage of insecurities in most people to like pick at on those things. And the other thing too is like that, like a lot of people don't realize this, but if you're a good marketer on the internet, like conversations are not hidden. Like if I'm trying to like sell weight loss, I can go into a weight loss group and read any number of like intimate private conversations where people share like what's really going on in their world inside of their head. Like if I can do that, what do you think like some of the bigger, more successful, and now there's artificial intelligence on top of it that can like compile that and feed it back to you. The ethical part of it starts with like not how can I step on your pain and make you feel whole with this product, but actually more like how can I really help you with what you're really actually trying to do, and how can I like create a real solution. And then instead of like trying to hype you and manipulate you into it, I'm just like, I'm recognizing this is what you're really trying to do, and how can I make that like easier, faster, better for you to actually do than if you tried to do that on your own.
Yeah.
That's why I say like most of my space at least is it's hard to tell people that, but like it's like most of it are Me Too businesses that don't really need to exist.
I mean, I feel like you could have both things going on though, right? Like trying to solve someone's pain, not from the pain point perspective, but from this could help you in whatever way. Like this could give you this kind of transformation, but also it could be something that maybe is saturated in the market.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you do kind of like the best thing that I find that actually like makes it work well is to pick and choose a group of people that you really love and have affinity for and would enjoy actually helping, and then just go into it with a blank slate of like, who are these people and what are they stuck on and what are their challenges. I find that to be the best way to do it, as where what most people do is they go, I have this thing, how do I get these people over here to take my thing? And fundamentally like that alone creates like an uphill, difficult part of the journey, as where if you can reverse that and say like, I just want to start with a group of people that I really like, think are cool. Like I don't think enough people think about like having customers and clients that you think are awesome, not people you think are idiots that you're trying to manipulate and like basically like see them as like a credit card with legs to like how can I yank the credit card right off the legs and get it? Which
Yeah, it sounds
is what
miserable
I
when you
think a
put it
lot of
that
people like
way.
really think of. But it's kind of true. Like you'd be amazed. I mean, as somebody who helps people do this, I get a lot of questions that basically boil down to like, how do I wrestle the credit card out of their hands?
Hmm.
What
Yeah,
do
well,
I
I
need to say
wonder.
or do to get the credit card?
I wonder. I mean, so many people may feel, right? Like that's what it is. So many people are trying to get from us.
Yeah.
We've been exposed to marketing, advertising now so much for our whole life, and now it's just inundated everywhere. And everyone, it does seem like everyone's trying to, not everyone, but it does seem like, or as if there are a lot of people out there who are trying to get something from you.
Yeah, most of them, but it's a fundamental paradigm shift to realize like it can actually be an act of love. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like a hey, you're weak and insecure and incomplete and everything about you sucks. But if you just drink one of these, you'll be the coolest kid in the neighborhood, right? Instead
Yeah.
of like the opposite of just like, hey, I love you, I see your journey, and I'm trying to serve you in whatever direction you're trying to go, and I'll go with you like wherever that takes me.
Yeah. When you said paradigm shift, that's what I was thinking too as you were talking. It just really starts with just a whole different perception at the very start. Maybe not making yourself the hero.
Yeah, it's really simple. Like, who are you serving? Like, you're always obviously you have your own needs in there, and that's okay. But are you serving them as like the primary driver of it, or are you serving yourself as the primary driver of it? Like both work, don't get me wrong, in business, but you'll feel a lot better and enjoy looking at yourself in the mirror if you feel like the whole thing is an act of giving instead of an act of trying to take.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom.
I think
I
so.
know it sounds so simple, but you'd be amazed at like in reality, like practice, like people do the total fucking opposite. And I get it. Like most people just we all got bills to pay and everybody's like very connected to their own needs. But the more you can like, just feel whole and be okay with all those needs in place and help other people to serve, like the easier your needs will get met. That's the ironic thing is when you come from wholeness. It's the same thing like you see it all the time in relationships where like somebody's trying to meet somebody and if they feel like incomplete and insecure and they just radiate neediness, no matter what they do, they can never find anybody. And the biggest thing they can do is to feel loved in themselves and let go of all that needy and not need anybody in the first place. And then just when they find somebody, it's like, I'm my wholeness, sharing my wholeness with you. Suddenly it all starts working when you don't need the other person in the first place. It's ironic. The minute you don't need a relationship, it works. And like money is a relationship that works the same kind of way, like in business, where the minute you start with wholeness of like, I'm just going to help you because I'm already full in my being and I don't need anything from you. Ironically, all those things that you would feel needy and desperate about start like coming back to you.
Big
Yeah.
thunder crack. I don't know if you guys heard that. Sorry.
What happened, Nick?
There's like a giant thunder crack right outside my window.
Oh, I didn't hear it, but I do hear rain outside my window now.
So Frankie, what plant medicines are you into these days?
Well, this is a low. I probably shouldn't tell too many people this, but I may be growing a fungi.
I may or may
Hey,
not
I left
be.
that open. That's
I
pretty
can
broad,
neither
man. That could
confirm
include
or deny those.
roses. That can include echinacea. We don't gotta get too specific. Some
I mean, it's
fungi.
actually been a little bit challenging in this period. I haven't, for the most part, I've done like a lot of my stuff is actually without plant medicines, just on the basis that I have 3 kids, 4 and under. And because of that, like I don't usually get like 2 hours to just trip balls like I would when I was single. Like, because it's like, Daddy, I'm hungry. She hit me. She took my toy. Feed me. I want this. I woke up. All of those kind of things. But like it's just a temporary phase of life. But for the most part, like, and I'm sure you guys experience the same thing, is I've had a few dozen like visionary experiences that were as intense as ayahuasca that were stone cold sober. And they all happened after ayahuasca in the sense of like once I learned to access those places, returning to them was easier without substance. I mean, you can always access those things. And, you know, like you see like monks just meditating for 30 years. But I find like once you get there once, it gets easier to get back without all of those things. So I don't always necessarily need plant medicines. And for me, like, I'm not saying this is everybody's normal experience, but I have fucking plant spirits just like all day long, every day, like 10, 15, 20, 30 times a day. It doesn't matter. They find me. There's no way for me to separate that reality and avoid it. And it's just like, just is what it is. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, and for me, I usually get like signs and synchronicities of certain spirits. So like the head medicine spirit of ayahuasca, as we call it, like, you know, Cielo ayahuasca, Papatua. There's a water company down here in Mexico, and they're called Ciel. And over that they use a lowercase, they use all capital letters except for the letter I, where they use a lowercase, and it has like a circle. And so if you kind of like read it, it says Cielo. I'll sometimes like see their truck, and immediately I'll like internally like almost taste ayahuasca as if it was in my mouth and have that like gag sort of reflex. And then I can feel the presence of that spirit even before I can like physically see anything. And it's like there's no way for me to stop that. Right? I don't know how to turn that off.
That's both fun and kind of disturbing, just to have like that taste of ayahuasca in your mouth unexpectedly.
It is. It makes you also realize like the line between like the medicine practice and being able to access these kind of other levels of reality and schizophrenia is like it's not that. So it's, you know, it's like it's almost like a level of control and being able to understand what's happening as we're like, you know, the schizophrenic person just hears the voice and automatically listens without sort of you know, like their own intuition guiding them for whether or not that's the right thing to do. But it's like you realize like we're both seeing spirits, we're just having very, very different ends of the spectrum for what's happening.
Yeah, like where are you coming from?
Yeah, for me, it was never ayahuasca, since I've never drank ayahuasca. The visionary plant that I've been working with has been cannabis for a while, and that's been a roller coaster of a ride ever since I started working with it. To like really be able to practice with it and understand it, and to not abuse it, and to let go of my emotional attachments to it and all of that. But I definitely get what you mean by the plant spirits, you know, just being with you all the time. And oh man, especially like for me, how just the rose spirit is just, it's like constantly there and in my body. And like you said, how did you put it? Like it just sort of like meshes with you.
Yeah.
I noticed with the dietas, when you invite those plants to, you know, come into your body and live within your body and to be taught its medicine, they're literally living inside of you. And so it's really hard to, or even impossible to really suss out like what's inside of you and what's outside of you. And I
Amen.
find it really amazing too how the visionary plants, they're powerful, and also the plants that you wouldn't even consider to be psychoactive are equally as powerful, but just in their own different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, there's so much like healing you can do with just like garlic or ginger, especially if you like don't just take it as like a material substance, but actually engage with, you know, its essence, its spirit of like what's really behind there for sure. And I remember you told me that when you were doing the white rose, so that's super cool that you're still getting it years later. And it's really interesting too, because a lot of times like I've had people that are trying to learn shamanic practices and you know, spirits and all these kind of things ask me like how to do it, and I really only know like my way of doing it. So I don't have like this is the playbook that works for everybody. Like I still remember actually the first time trying ayahuasca on my own. I remember because there's like an hour delay when it hits you. I was on the toilet. I was just sitting on the toilet and like boom, boom, all of a sudden like psychedelic trip is on. And I remember like all of a sudden the floor tiles started to flow and they became alive. And there was like, it was just very gentle, but they were no longer like solid objects the way I'd always perceived them at that point in my life. And whenever I sit down on like the toilet, even today, I can make floor tiles in my mind flow again. Like they're like almost like they're liquid instead of a solid. And often like spirits will sometimes come to me as like almost like apparitions within floor tiles. But like, if somebody asked me, how do you do that? Like, how do you see a spirit in a floor tile? Like, I wouldn't know what to tell them. And I remember actually there's a young guy, a really good friend of mine. He's in Serbia, and he asked me like, how do you connect to the four archangels? And it was the same thing. It was like, how do you like, connect with something in a floor tile? Like, I don't even really know how to answer that question. And I get a lot of synchronicities. And I remember, like, for me, a lot of times spirits just like kind of show up unannounced, and I just get a million synchronicities all at once, and I feel their presence. Like you mentioned, Reina Maria, I've got lots of funny stories about that. But I remember we were driving through like on a road trip across America, and I was in like the Arizona desert. And in the Arizona desert, like there's periods where like for an hour and a half on the road, you see nothing. There might be like 2 billboards and like a gas station. And I remember like, as we're doing that, he was on the phone, like messaging me, how do you get this? And there was one billboard, and it was a casino. And he said, how do you spot the 4 A's? And I could just feel them, like their presence. And then I looked up, and there was one billboard, and there's like 2 fucking billboards an hour. And it had a casino, and they were holding 4 aces, and they said the 4 A's. And he asked me like right at that time, how do you see the 4 A's? It's like, I don't know, but they're here right now.
I'm looking at one right now.
But I think it's like, as you learn a being, it's like, I don't think it's different than awesome. Yeah. Like, how do you know it's Nikki 2 Angels? I don't know. Like, it's just him. I don't like, it can't be anyone else. How do you know him? I don't know. I know him. Like, that's.
Yeah. I get what you mean as far as invoking spirits and then really becoming receptive to them. And a lot of it, for me anyway, is just through pure knowing and intuition, feeling.
Yeah.
A lot of it's not through visual, although sometimes it is. Like if I just need to get out of painting. I notice for me, Reina Maria will show up a lot of times if I smoke it, or even if I don't. Sometimes I could close my eyes and just see this morphing green light, and it's sort of like kind of image on the computer that just like a background type of thing, where it's just like this green morphing gas. It's really hard to describe, but it's just like when you know it, and you don't really need to reason it out so much as just you know it in the heart. That's that thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and sometimes they really do. I have the green kind of visionary thing too. Like for me, I actually remember when we were on the road trip, we had passed from Canada to America, and of course, like you don't bring anything across the border. That would be a terrible mistake. So we were without like that particular plant spirit for quite a few days, and we're like, oh, we'll be in Colorado in a few days. It'll sort itself out. And we were driving through the state of Arkansas. We got to Texas, and there's a little town called Texarkana that is half in Arkansas and half in Texas, so they call it Texarkana. And I remember all of a sudden, like within 5 minutes, I got like 10 or 15 different like 420 kind of signs. I remember like the gas was 420 a gallon, and somebody had like on sale now for 420 a pound. You can buy whatever kind of like shit on the side of the road. And they were just like, in 5 minutes, I was like, oh, we're gonna see cannabis in a minute. And then I remember we pulled up to a gas station, and there were a couple like brothers rapping in their SUV, and they were like, you could tell they were smoking lots of weed in that SUV. And I was like, I knew it. And so I just went up and knocked on the door. I was like, hey, this is a little strange, but I just had to ditch everything I had at the border 3 days ago. I don't suppose you guys would hook me up. And then they sent me on this whole like other drug dealer search. But it was interesting that I got like 10 signs like 5 minutes before it came. And then all of a sudden there's just an element of like, I smell weed in the parking lot. Where is that coming from? It's such a strong smell. And then of course there it was right there.
Yeah. And it's interesting too how it connects you with other people.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit of it.
And it's interesting too, because I mean, you use it in a shamanic way, as do I. There's a lot of people that don't have the same kind of experiences of us. Like, it's not an inward journey. They're not connecting with, my brother being my brother's like one of the biggest potheads I know, but he's never had anything sort of like mystical or interesting happening on cannabis. And like, for me, it's like, how do you not?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you smoke it all day, I know, like for instance, for me anyway, I've had mystical experiences with it, and then I've also had just sort of mundane experiences with it.
Yeah,
And that was just me being mentally addicted to it and using it just to cope with life, really, and certain hardships that I was going through. And I noticed then when I was using it just sort of like as a coping mechanism that the medicine wouldn't show up. And so then
mm,
I had to really rework my relationship with it to be able to use it in a capacity that really is for medicine again. And so out of
that's
that,
interesting.
yeah, so out of that whole journey, I sort of got a rule set with it. And Hamilton helped me clarify that too around the rule set of being, having to know the dosage and being safe on it. Like I've had a couple hiccups, a couple oops where I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. Like when I was working at a golf course and I smoked beforehand and then I had to go operate heavy machinery. But I just see it
Mm.
as a learning experience. Like, okay, let's not do that again. That freaked me out. And yeah, so I mean, with cannabis for me, it's definitely been one hell of a learning experience. And yeah, definitely. I don't think it gets I guess recognition in sort of the psychedelic world. But man, for me, it's definitely intense. I don't know about for either of you two.
No, it's the same actually. It's interesting you say that too, because I definitely have like, mundane moments where I'm like, it's not always like mystical or profound. It's just like I'm stoned and now I want to order the pizza. Let's get where is the pizza place still open? Like I still have those kind of experiences. But there's definitely moments where like I'll lay down and go so deep within myself that I'm like that is cannabis driven that it's like they can be very ayahuasca like. It's not like the same 10 out of 10 intensity for me, but it like goes to many of the same places. And I've taken a few people on those kind of journeys, and they're always like a little bit surprised that like cannabis can even take you there in the first place, because some of them are like, oh, I've been a pothead for 20 years, I know this plant. I'm like, well, let's just try it and see. And then you can see there, like I still actually remember the first time um Hamilton like blew my skull off with the Nicaro. And so it's always a little bit fun, like, to see that reaction in somebody else. And like you can see a Nicaro is just like totally melting their reality while they're super baked in ways they couldn't imagine that reality could melt. And I can think of one. I had some friends down here and we were all on the beach, and we decided to do a ceremony at night, and they had never done one before. And so they're like, oh, we know we will take a little bit of edibles. It was a ingested version, not a smoked version. And I still remember first, like after the first Ecro, I remember he was like, I had no idea you could do that. And my stone friend was like, a surprise. And then I remember actually there was a point. It was one of the most interesting things that's ever happened to me. I had brought some music and I had an Alan Watts track play, and it's never done this before or since, but it screwed up in the sense that it played twice, but in different times. So there was like a second ghost track, and that ghost track was shifted like 30 seconds in time. So it was like a part, like one of the tracks was playing as normal, and one of the tracks would play something that was like 30 seconds ahead. And it was him talking, and somehow the two tracks never like competed with each other at any point. There was never a point where both Alan Watts were saying something at the same time and it overlapped. And so for us all experientially sitting there, it just felt like the spirit of Alan Watts just like dropped this super intense download on us all at the same
Ooh.
time for like 10 minutes. He was just like saying, and even though it didn't make sense in linear time, it was like one of the deepest conversations I've ever had. And then I remember they were like, holy cow, like where did you create that track? And I said, I didn't. It just happened that one time in the ceremony. They're like, no, like, and I went to play it again, and it would never glitch like that again. It just played normal as a normal, like just like you would hear on YouTube, Alan Watts kind of talking track. But there was this extra like shadow effect that time, and we all got like this huge download. And I remember they were like, I had no idea cannabis could do that. And I was like, truthfully, neither did I, but it's pretty fucking cool when it does happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a big old download from Alan Watts.
And not only that, it was like I don't even know how to explain it, but it was like so deep and so profound, like all the things he was sharing at us, and the two different timing of the tracks somehow like magnified or amplified whatever he was
Mm.
saying in that moment.
Yeah. I feel that too. Like when anything does kind of happen out of the ordinary and unexpected like that, it does make you kind of question. And then if it is something so potent and so powerful too, it's like equally mind bending.
And it literally had bent our electronic devices in ways that we couldn't repeat or duplicate. Like I didn't know you could take enough cannabis that your electronic devices would malfunction in ways that make you like crazy spiritual in a moment, but it apparently it can, right?
1,001 layer of the onion spirit.
Yeah. But then, of course, like you guys obviously realize too when you get deep into those, there's lots of games of like that you play with yourself, like I am creating it, no, I'm not. I am creating it, no, I'm not. Like there's lots of those kind of games. Because
Sure.
like in the normal physical experience, like I don't feel like I'm my cell phone or the speaker playing the music, but apparently like I am, as are you guys. We're all of it. But it's kind of crazy when you just see electronic devices just do what they want, and Alan Watts is going to teach you some cool shit for 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's an awesome experience that you could have it be so one with it all.
Yeah, it was funny too because they were asking me like, "Can we do that again?" I was like, "I have no idea how I did it this time."
It's like the whole how do I interact with the spirits thing.
Yeah. I mean, there definitely are principles, but I think everybody has to do it their own way.
Well, I
What would
think,
that principle be? Sorry, Melissa. Go
oh,
ahead.
go on.
Well, I don't think it's like you said, Nick, like there's intuition, there's feeling, like it's not different than like we're all spirits. Like I always say, like if I'm trying to talk to my mom, whether it's a Facebook message or an email or a phone call or a text, whatever, like I just know it's her. Like it can't be anyone else other than her. Like I think as you get to build relationships with certain spirits, you just know them, and just like real life, like I think part of the reason, like at least for me, that I know a lot of plant spirits is because like Hamilton introduced me to them, and then as you build relationships, they become more and more familiar until they're just like, oh yeah, that's Papa Two over there, and and that kind of thing. But it's not all that different than like human relationships where just the more you connect with them intentionally, if you have friends on Facebook, like the more you message them and the more you talk to them and the more you hang out with them, like the more you're going to know them. And often you'll start getting those like weird kind of like spidey senses. Like everybody's had this experience who has like some level of intuition where right before somebody is about to call you or message you, you think of them right at the moment they're thinking of you, and then suddenly like through the ether you guys pick each other up and you get a message from them like at the exact, like I often have that with people I'm super connected with where I can tell when they're messaging me, even if like I don't have access to the device to be able to check their messages. I can tell like my friend Rob was actually messaging me earlier. He's like one of my super duper bros, and we haven't talked in like a month. And I knew he was messaging me. I could just feel it. Like his when his mind is focused on me, it's like impossible for me to not know it. And I don't necessarily have that with everybody, but I don't know. I don't think spirits are all that different. Like they're just relationships. You meet them, you get introduced to them, you get to know them, and you work with them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really what we're talking about, the principle of communication and being able to communicate with those things, and then that principle could take on many definitions: intuition, you know, feeling, knowing, all of it, verbal, written.
I think
Yeah.
something that might be important, sorry to cut you off, Nick, is
Okay.
almost what we were talking about with the marketing and how to approach the situation. I think it's like a perception shift or a paradigm shift to actually start, to be able to start the communication, or to be able to know that the communication is possible, or to believe that it could even be happening. I feel
Yeah.
like that might be like a step before the communication.
Yeah, because there's a number of people in our society who would say those things aren't real and they've never had those experiences and it's all made up and you're just, imagining this and imagining that, which is in some ways actually true, but
Well,
they
yeah,
don't
I mean, a
realize.
lot of it is the imagination. I feel like that's probably the biggest bridge for it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, and it's really like you said, it's a shift in perception is where like for a lot of people, like imagination means make believe, fantasy, nothing you experience there is true. But like for me, I mean, and I'm sure you guys do it to a certain extent too, like in different ways, is like most of the shit I create in my life, I imagine in my head first. Like that's not an accident. Like imagination precedes physical
Yeah,
reality, even though everybody would say, oh, it's nothing. Like Neville Goddard, who I think is one of the best, like quote unquote, like the secret law of attraction kind of guys. I think he's probably the one I would listen to the most anyway. He says like there's nothing in this world that got physically made that wasn't first imagined. Like if you're gonna make a chair, you can't just like start making a chair. You gotta have to have an imagination in your head of what it is you're trying to build and then build it out
yeah.
of that. And so the paradigm shift, as you mentioned, Liz, is just a lot of people not understanding that imagination is a real thing because it's part of experience, and experience is like it's real whether you want it to be or not. And it's not all hallucination. Like I don't even really care for that word in general.
I
Yeah,
think
the
too,
drive.
even knowing that like the spirits are real or that things are spirits
Yeah.
versus just like, is my water bottle. Or
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's another paradigm shift as well.
I mean, I remember when that shifted for me and the understanding that things equal spirits. And then, just starting to retrain my whole perception to be able to equate things as spirits and then go beyond just like what we would normally think of as things and start to understand mental states as things and sort of just like the intangible things also as things and them also being spirits. But I mean, like just practically looking at it, I mean, I'm communicating with spirits. I mean, like to turn on your laptop's a thing, your laptop's a spirit. To communicate with it, to turn on, you need to turn on the button first, and you're communicating with your laptop. Hey, turn on.
I actually saw the
And it turns on.
coolest thing that shows like kind of hints at the reality that like because what you're alluding to is you're not really experiencing the computer as this separate inanimate object as many people imagining. You're experiencing yourself experiencing the computer. Because I understand it too because there was a period of my life where I grew up like super religious and then I kind of rejected it, and for like a small period of life I was that devout materialist
Mm-hmm.
arrogant kind of atheist, and I think we all know at least like a few people like that, like like science explains all, my friend, like that kind of phase of life where you go through. I was looking at this cool video, and just to kind of preface, I remember somebody like asking me, Ilka was talking to this guy and he was saying like it's all like out there, it's material and it's real, ha ha ha. And she was saying that's not really true. And then he's pointed to a salt shaker on the table and was like, well, that's salt and you say it's salt, so like clearly it's there and we agree on it. Like, ha ha ha, I've just proven it's material and out there and real. And I was like, well, I know that sounds true to you, but you're not actually experiencing salt. You're experiencing yourself experiencing salt, and you taste it a little bit different than she does, and you say the word a little bit different than it does, and you see it for a little bit different than, and you're literally looking at it from a different angle of perception, meaning like you're on this side of the table and you're on that. So you're looking at it different. And so even though you think you're talking about the exact same thing, you're not. You're talking about your perception of salt, and that's not the same thing as salt in and of itself. And I see these people who are like devout materialist atheists, and I saw this really cool experiment. You guys should actually try it because anybody can do this. A guy, he held up a piece of paper to a mirror and then holds something behind the mirror. It doesn't really matter what you hold, just like any object, like you can take anything. And if you go to the side and you film a video, what will happen is your phone will film the object on the other side of the mirror in the reflection, which should be in a physical universe impossible, right? Because there's no direct line of sight. Like it can't see the reflection past the piece of paper or whatever you're using to block it. but it'll show you the mirror essentially, which is what you're looking at all the time. And obviously, like you guys know this, having gone deeper in experiences, but like most people don't, they don't realize everything is conscious. And, you know, for me, that shift was just like looking at my floor tiles on the floor and like, hey, they're moving, right? Like they didn't move before, but now they're moving. Like I know psychologically I'm tripping balls and I can explain it. It's all in the brain and those kind of things. But like, how do I explain it the next day when I'm sober and I can sit on the toilet and I can voluntarily, in my own perception, make them move and make them stop moving, like just with my own mind? And it's like, well, am I really moving or is my mind moving? And it's, of course, people would say it's all in your head, but that's the whole fucking point, is everything's in your head. There is no out there. It's all in your fucking head to begin with. There is no salt. There's just you experiencing salt. And so however you define salt really defines you, not the salt.
I mean, out there is so concrete, right?
And I mean, I get it. Like, cause you know, like when we all go through this awakening period, it's not like, you know, before that period, I would fall down on the sidewalk and be like, oh, I am infinite creator self, imagining myself as me falling down on sidewalk. No, I go, ow.
Yeah.
Fucking hurts, fucking sidewalk.
I just
right?
skinned my knee.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, I mean, I get why people come through that paradigm, but I think it's also like it's an intentional kind of control of our system for people to not realize there is something more. It is very real. And you guys can attest to this as well as anyone. It can change your lives in beneficial ways that you could not possibly fucking imagine. I remember actually having a conversation with Hamilton about this. I remember, you know, we were just sitting around in the jungle talking about like crazy healing stuff he had seen in the jungle. And I remember he said, there was this Westerner and they told him they had been depressed for 26 years. I don't know, like they knew the exact moment they became depressed, something had happened in their lives. And they tried everything. They tried therapists and like talking it out. And they had tried like, I'll take the pills and try and mute my feelings. And everything they tried at the end of the day, like just didn't fucking work. And they were in the ceremony and he said, the guy saw a vision of an angelic being, and the angelic being came and shined like almost like a laser at this thing inside of him, and then held up this black mass and said, this is your depression, you can let it go now. And so he just kind of like magically just kind of let it disperse kind of thing. And he said the next day he woke up and he was like not depressed anymore. He said it was like first time in 26 years, like I don't feel depressed. And he said it never came back since. And I remember laughing with Hamilton. I was like, doesn't that just amaze you? And he was like, not really. And I was like, why not? And he's like, well, who do you think called the angel in the first place? It's like, touche. But when you realize like, okay, so a part of our world will say, okay, that's not real. But at the end of the day, they've literally tried everything else for 26 years and nothing worked. And the minute they saw a spirit in their own reality, however you believe that, like that depression is gone forever. So like, you know, you guys can attest to the fact that, you know, all of the stuff that a lot of people would label as nonsense has the capacity at times to like upgrade your life in ways you can't seriously imagine. By the way, I'm just letting you guys know, here a crying toddler may come in as part of the bonus section of this podcast.
Oh yeah.
It's all good. It's getting to be that time anyway. It's getting close to 6:30. I know we said we have until 6:30, but yeah, I totally get what you mean, Frankie, about, you know, maybe some people would say like, oh, that's not real. But I mean, that's just their own thoughts, going back to what we were talking about, like with people in their own experience. Well, maybe that's just how they're experiencing it. But, you know, I mean, I know for us, you know, we have done these practices to really, you know, shift our ways of thinking and to be able to conceive of things as spirits and to go even, you know, a bit further in that, and to conceive of our own mental states as spirits too. Like we were talking about, like with the any of those spirits, sadness, happiness, and really be able how to like work them and to be able to balance them within our own life, and to be able to recognize them, and to be able to really, you know, communicate with the spirits that we work with to really balance our emotions and to help us out and to bring us things that we find joyous. And like you said, having these practices that, benefit our lives are ultimately something, that's helpful for us. And so, if somebody out there would be listening and would poo-poo it, well, I mean, go and, learn these types of arts. And like after years of that, come back and talk to me. See, how you experience it then.
Well, I can see how it would be confronting, though, to someone to say, like, what you think is real, what you believed to be real your entire life is actually not.
Yeah. And in many ways, it's like it's manufactured by the society you live in, or by a lot of times by asshole marketers to sell you shit, which is where we started the conversation.
You're the cause and the solution, Frankie.
But it's true, right? Like you guys know that. Like it's amazing to me that like how much, people feeling like shit and inadequate is just like endless amounts of commercials that say you're inadequate. Like, this as a woman, like it's kind of funny, like Photoshop models on magazine covers who don't even themselves look like the chick on the cover. If you've ever played with the Photoshop of like, let's just bring her hips in and make her ass just a little bit curvier and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, the real woman doesn't even look like this. But how many women would look at that and then feel inadequate and say, I'll never be as beautiful as her. And it almost happens at a near unconscious level. But a lot of times people don't realize like that's the stuff that's really shaped your paradigm, and it's not fucking real at all. And in many ways, like you see like the mental illness that is very real in our society.
Fed it. I mean, there's Barbie, the same exact image you're talking about, right? It's not like it even started with Photoshop.
Yeah, totally.
It's just been, I don't know what happened somewhere along the lines. I feel like, did everyone always though have this, I don't know, like the level of understanding of what reality actually is? I'm not sure when that started.
Yeah, it's very weird when you wake up to what it is and you experience it in such a way where you experience it so deeply that you know it forever and ever. That doesn't mean you don't like experience forgetting, like you forget lots. But if somebody says like, hey, we're all one and we create reality, like that through and through in your being, it can't be anything else other than that. And yet, like if you tell 99 people out of 100 that, they'll look at you like, you think we're all one and none of this is real, and you're like, yeah, I know that. And it's a very weird thing to be in society that like most of the people have no fucking idea who they are. Like, never mind that they can't tell you who you are. Like, they have no idea who they've never been able to just sit alone in a room quietly long enough, whether that's with plant medicine or without, to figure out like none of this is actually real in the way they conceptualize it to be real. It's definitely, it makes stuff like this stuff really cool.
It's so positive, but it's almost like a rude awakening for the people that you're like, no, really, it's not real.
Yeah, it can be isolating, right? Because the amount of people you can talk to that get it suddenly like dramatically shrinks. Like not that like I've been in that world too, so I'm not like saying this in a judgmental way, but I'm no longer interested in like, how's my sports ball team doing? And this actor said that. Really, the actor said that. Like, oh my God, did you hear about the new fucking superhero movie? No, I did not. No, I don't care. Did you hear about the thing in the news? No, I didn't. Don't care. And like all of these things, because you start to realize that the power that you take back out of all of it is like as Nick kind of mentioned. You intentionally, like he mentioned, like a thing like happiness, like, and I'm just, giving a personal example for me. Like I keep a gratitude book. And I remember actually like we were having like 2 months ago, we were just having like an insane amount of back-to-back car problems. And it was making us miserable because we'd fix one thing. And in Mexico, it's not straightforward like America, where you bring it there, a day later, they hand it back to you. There's a bill. In Mexico, they're like, well, call me in a week and I'll let you know whether it's done or not. And then a week later, you can't reach them. And then a week and a half turns into 2 weeks. And it's like the whole thing is just miserable. Like if you have to go through it. And I remember she was really, really upset. And she was like, aren't you upset? And I wasn't in that moment. She asked, why not? And I basically just spouted like the last month of my gratitude journal. Like, we got a really cool fucking house. We got a fridge full of food. Like, our kids are healthy. we got this, we got that. I got a business, I got people, like I'm making an impact. Like I just got a long thank you message from this. My phone works. I got a cool computer. We live in paradise. There's a beach. We got friends all over, like on and on and on and all these things. And that was it's not an accident. It's a directly, like Nick said, like I wanted to feel grateful. So I started to find reasons to intend that in my reality. And then it kind of like, a month later got reflected back to me where like, yeah, there was stuff going wrong, but I had 99 other things going right. Do I want to focus on like the 2 or 3 things that are driving me crazy, or the 99 that are going exactly the way I want to? And that's the thing that comes out of the change, is you start to like intend your own reality, and you start to let go of all the stuff you have no control over. That's whether there's going to be a war in Ukraine, like I have no say in whether that's going to happen. What's going to happen with the banking
You're
system.
not in those conversations.
Yeah, the COVID hysteria and all the things that like are bigger than you, that you don't have the ability to change, and you start to focus on the things that are usually in your direct immediate experience that you have 100% control over. Like, what do I put in my body first thing in the morning? Who am I going to spend time with today? What am I going to do? What am I going to create? What is this going to look like? Like those kind of things. Who am I going to say to this person right here who's a friend of mine? And you start to take back power in the ways where you actually have direct 100% control, and you focus way more of your time and attention on that. Not that I don't ever get sucked into like some sports ball or some pointless, like movie of the day. Like we're going to go see the Mario movie on Sunday. I'm going to probably get totally sucked in for like 90 minutes into that like nonsensical, but you don't take it all so seriously. Like I remember a time in my life where like my sports team was losing. I'd be like throwing shit at the TV. What the fuck is wrong with you guys? And then at some point I woke up and I was like, this is a group of millionaire entertainers that has like literally no bearing on my life. And my sanity is tied to whether or not they perform in the sports ball. And I'm like, there's something not quite right about that. And that's the paradigm like most people live in, that's been artificially kind of spoon fed to them. And when you start taking back your own power, it's like, it's little things. I'm like, I always wanted a hammock. Like you guys can see, I got a vision board behind me. I'm like, that was the first thing I checked off on the list. It's like, I put a hammock on my vision board, and then I realized like, I drive by a hammock guy every day. How much is it? It's $20. You're telling me to fulfill this? Like I could lay in this comfy thing every day, and it's just $20 US. Here you go, maestro, give me my hammock. But you start to like find all the little joys in life that most people are too busy, like being stressed out, driving in traffic, missing.
I find it so fascinating to hear the commonalities of when you truly awaken to really what's important to you. It's usually the same thing people say. It's the people in my life, my relationship to them, my health, and it's usually like those 3 things that are of the utmost importance. And I found the same thing. It's the people in my life, my relationship to them, my relationship with myself, my health.
1000%, my dude. It's funny too, because if you ever listen to people who are like 100 years old and they tell you like what they would do differently, they never say like, I wish I could have worked more. They never say like, man, I wish I would have got like that cool car. I should have just bought that fucking cool car and or I should have stuck around and stayed cheering for that team until they won a championship. If I had just like been loyal to them till they won a championship, like everything would have been better. They always say like, man, I didn't spend enough time with the people I care about. I wish I could go back and do that again. They say like, I really wish I would paid attention more to my health. I wish it would have been more authentic to me and what actually mattered to me. I felt like I spent so much of my life living someone else's life. And those are clues to what's really important, right? Like when all of a sudden you're out of time and you're faced with like what's really important, like those deep things sink in. But as you kind of just alluded to, like you don't have to wait till you're 100 years old and fucking dying to figure that out and live it today. Like it just go hug your kids, spend some time with them, do something or whatever it is for you. Like you guys said, I think before we went live that you guys went hiking. Like so many people like don't make time to go just be in a beautiful mountain somewhere in nature and do that. But when it's all said and done, you're going to remember more of that and less of like, I wish I would have spent more time in traffic getting back and forth and didn't. I wish I would have picked up more groceries.
Yeah.
It would look more like that Barbie doll.
And no,
it's totally those like little mundane things that really are the miracles in life.
I wish I got a Gucci bag sooner.
Is that on your vision board?
It is not, but like that's kind of the point. Like, it's somehow like, and we're all guilty of to a certain extent, but like we get lost in what's really not fucking important at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, like having that gratitude and really invoking the spirit of gratitude into your life and intentionally focusing on it just, changes your whole perception of things. And it's not always easy. I'm not saying like this is like an easy feat by any means. Sometimes like things could be going awry and you lose focus. But I think, you know, when the practice is working, when you become aware of it and you regain the focus of the gratitude.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
And not only would I
I
say
need to write that down.
it's not easy, I would say the opposite. It's hard. I was actually talking to a friend about this. He's like, I started gratituding journal. He's like, do you ever feel like you kind of got to like force it a little bit in the beginning? And it's like, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
pretty normal. That's the whole point, is like you don't start feeling grateful. You don't go from like 0 to 100 like I'm just blessed and I'm living this amazing angelic life. The opposite is like real life is happening and you have to kind of like almost reverse it and find like sometimes it's like work just to find the first thing. Like when things aren't going your way, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What am I grateful for? Fucking nothing, right? Like fuck nothing.
Yeah.
And then you're eventually like, well, I do kind of appreciate a hot shower. Like I do have a nice shower. That's okay. It's like it makes it less awful. And then you're like, okay, hot shower. And
Yeah.
if you do that, like eventually you'll find a second thing. Like, well, I do have my favorite thing to eat in the fridge. So okay, that's kind of cool. And then I'm like, well, and if you do that long enough, you're like, eventually you'll start to find hundreds and hundreds of things. And especially if you like just focus on people, you'll find lots of those. And then you realize like, holy shit, like, my life is lived by my intention. And then all of a sudden that starts to, the gratitude expands once you start to find it.
Yeah, I relate to that.
Absolutely.
I do also relate to it feeling hard sometimes, even with having a gratitude practice and even being intentional. Sometimes it's just,
Yeah, I mean, we're
it's
poopy
just
pants.
not easy being in this human body. But it does
yeah.
always
And
honestly feel better when you can connect to it. That actually happened to me today. I did like a very short gratitude meditation, like a guided meditation, and I really wasn't feeling that great. I was like, oh, I'm not grateful for any of this stuff. But I felt better afterwards. And I mean,
yeah.
I do have a gratitude practice, but right, it was so hard for me to access like the feeling of it.
And I think that's normal. Like, I think a lot of people
Totally.
think you're supposed to start at 100 and you're just like, oh, I'm so blessed. How are you? I'm blessed and grateful. How are you?
And
Like,
then it's
that's not
always
real.
100, it's not. And that's okay too.
Yeah, it's those
Yeah,
small
that's
things
the
that
other
add
thing.
up.
It's a
Well,
lot
I
of like
think
actually.
I was going to cut you off and say, I'm grateful that you're here talking to us today.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm glad you guys are getting podcast number one. I was actually talking about this with Hamilton. We were talking about focus, and a lot of people like when the shamans are training in the jungle and they want to connect with the spirit, like often they'll train with crystals. And what they'll do, or a flame, and they'll focus on a flame, and their goal is to focus on a flame until their mind no longer wavers, or focus on and then eventually they start training multiple points of focus where like, can I focus on two crystals at the same time? The same way that like once you learn how to drive and you can hold your focus, then suddenly you can like play with the radio,
drive and
or you can
text.
like look. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's lots of those too. And what's interesting is a lot of people think you're supposed to be this Zen like Jedi who like never has real thoughts that get in the way. Like I'm laser focused on the crystal and it never bends. But it's more like riding a bike where you like you look at the crystal and then you think, oh damn, mosquito. And then you're like, okay, sorry, what was it? Crystal, that's right. And then you're like, oh my God, I got my ass is itchy. I gotta move because my ass is itchy. And then you're thinking about the itch on your ass. And then you think, I'm hungry. Like, what am I gonna eat later? And you have to constantly pull your mind back to crystal. If you do that long enough, intentionally enough, eventually it'll become easy and your mind will just go on crystal. But a lot of people think it's just like you're just magically in this Zen. And I think gratitude is like that. It's not like you suddenly like just wake up, everything is amazing, blah blah blah. The opposite, like often I'll wake up with my young kids finger in my nose, tired shit, don't want to face the day. I don't feel like, oh, I'm so blessed and grateful to be alive. But if you focus on it and you write down a few things and you do that a couple of times, you'll train your mind to go back there over and over. And what you do will like essentially expand. What you focus on will expand in your reality, whatever that is. It doesn't really matter. Like if you focus on, like why your sports ball team is fucked beyond recognition and won't get better, then you'll just find more reasons that's true. But like, I think gratitude is like that. It's not this magic thing where you're just zen like in gratitude. The opposite. You got to like, it's like falling off a bike and you got to pick yourself back up again. But if you do it long enough, it'll become easier and it'll like, be riding a bike will be second nature. But kudos to you for being honest about that. Cause I don't think enough people talk about like, it is hard to find reasons to be grateful sometimes.
Yeah,
and you do it anyway, because because the one who benefits the most is you. You'll feel better when you're done. Even if you just got like 2 or 3 reasons where life isn't so shit in that moment, like they don't have to be like, I feel so blessed, but they're like, everything sucks, but these 2 or 3 things, at least I have those. Like that's a form of gratitude to me. It's like everything, the whole world is crumbling around me. I hate today. I don't want to exist. I got a fucking headache. I'm tired. It all sucks. But my kids are playing really sweet today. And I'm really grateful that at least there's that.
Yeah, I think it's called the practice for a reason.
Yeah.
And, the more you practice at it, the better you get. But like you said in the beginning, it could be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even I still think
it's
it's tough, even practicing it after a while,
Ain't that the truth?
But I think it's a tool.
Definitely the blank page where you're like, okay, reasons to be grateful.
Yeah, it's like that thing that definitely balances out the emotions that can just be caused by life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a deeper intention of saying like, I want to feel good in my life, that like that gratitude brings with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Finding the gratitude for the little things. Well, I think that about wraps it up.
All right, guys.
So too.
Appreciate you guys doing this. Let's share some gratitude for that.
Yeah. Gratitude for you, Frankie, for you, Melissa, for the mutual community that we met through.
For Zoom, for bringing us all together.
Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah. Technology, absolutely.
I feel like technology gets a bad rap so often. We're too grateful for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have met you cool people without it.
Yeah, totally. We were like online friends, and Frankie, we were not friends, and now we are. So I'm super stoked about that. Thank you for sharing all of your experience and your wisdom.
I hope you guys get to make an awesome show and get to do lots more of these, because
and Nick, thanks for inviting me to be on your podcast and help you to fulfill your intention and your dream. I think that's amazing. Inspired by that.
I consider it our podcast because you're the co-host. But no, yeah, I'm equally.
What was your idea though? Yeah, he just told me the other day it was like how many years? Like 10-year long intention that you had.
Yeah, that's amazing. It was a long one. Yeah, thanks for helping me fulfill it. And yeah, Frankie, I hope we can continue to have these conversations for a long time, on and off the podcast. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, the only thing is those conversations are a little more scarce these days with 3 kids, but
sure.
Well, we could have one together and make it 5 kids. That might be fun.
A podcast where you just bring your kids into the room.
2 hours of crying.
That'd be funny. Actually,
tune into next week.
Can I just ask you before we go, Melissa? Did you not were your best ideas about parenting not like before you had kids? Like all the things you thought parenting would be, are they not like totally different to the actual experience of it?
I have to say that I was unaware of what parenting was before I became a parent. And so my idea of it was, I don't think I had an idea. It was more so I was very unaware, and I was like, oh, that's this thing that people do, is they have kids. And here I am with 2. I mean, my kids are cute and amazing and lovable and soul loving. But yeah, I'm grateful for them.
I know for me, it was like a lot of oh, my kids would never do that.
I'm sure they never do.
My kids would never just wig out in a store. Like you see somebody, yeah, my kids would never do that. And then
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God. My kids were wrestling in Target earlier.
yeah. And now I'm like, oh yeah, like I see somebody else, their kid waking out. I'm like, dude, I feel you. You know what
I
helps?
know, I know. There is that bond with everyone, right? Where you can just be like, I get it.
Yeah. All right,
That's
guys, I gotta
interesting.
jet because the kids are waking up.
Yep. I gotta go help take care of mine.
I got a question then for you. I'm gonna keep that one in mind.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Evolving the Conversation. Let us know in the comments what you took away from Frankie today. And we will check you next time. I'm looking for the stop recording button, so I'm having a hard time talking and operating my technology at the same time. I'm just going to put that out there. But
Nice.
all
All
right.
good.